Darla, it's such a delight to be with you. How are
It's a
you?
delight to be with you. I am super fantastic,
Yay, of
Fiona.
course.
I'm super fantastic, and I just have one request before we
Okay.
start.
Yeah.
I need to hear your roar. I have to hear your roar.
Let that lionheart roar.
That part right there, that part. It's a joy. It's a
Oh,
joy to be
bless
here.
you.
Joy.
Well, and you and our cohort inspired me to do that. I think we should start by telling people how we know each other because that when I went, wow, that was the first time I'd ever done that. And it was at our tuck.
Really?
Yeah, it's at dinner. I'd never done that before. Yeah. It's
Wow. It was so organic. And
yeah.
probably because we met at Tuck. We met, what, a year ago? Has it been a
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
At Dartmouth. And
Yeah.
it was one of the most amazing times that I had ever experienced because I felt that I had connected or reconnected with my tribe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just the diversity on so many levels and the appreciation and the celebration.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was like being at Disneyland.
Yeah, it was.
It
It,
was really
yeah.
like being at Disneyland as an entrepreneur, to be able to be with people who speak the same language. You don't really have to explain yourself.
Yeah.
And it was one of those gifts that keeps on giving,
Yeah,
keeps on giving.
that's how I felt, especially about not having to explain yourself. And like we all come from such different places in life. We've had such different lived experiences, but it felt like there was one thing that really had bonded us together, beyond words, and that was our passion and tenacity to live a life doing what we know makes us feel alive, like living by our purpose. And there are so many highs and lows and pros and cons that come with that, and I agree, and that we just that's what brought us together, in an unspoken way from the second we were in each other's presence. And I particularly remember one of the most bonding moments that I had with you, and I think you'll agree with me, was that lunchtime where I shared with
Yes,
you about Mary, my dear friend,
yes,
our sister, who I had just done the film with. And I just remember how excited you were for Mary, and you hadn't even met Mary. So I would
yes,
love to like
yes.
start like, can you tell me about how you felt in that moment, and then also how that leads into the business and the and entrepreneurship that you've started, and Nia's dolls. Like, yeah, let's get into it.
Well, here's the thing. When you were talking about your journey over in Africa
Yeah, in
and meeting
Zambia, Africa.
in Zambia and meeting Mary, I felt that Mary was a part of my story because the way that you had captured her story, and even with the women who were there to celebrate, they were there to celebrate each other. And again, we were seated during lunch. You were sharing the story. I felt a kinship. I felt an immediate bond. And I felt so fortunate to be able to feel the love, to feel the the call, your call to be able to go and to be able to capture stories that perhaps would not be captured.
Mhm.
And so I felt your dedication to telling stories that generally get buried, or stories that are not even looked upon as being worthy to be told. And here,
Yeah.
the way that you told it, it just made something leap within
Yeah.
me. And I've just felt so grateful in that moment that you would share Mary with me.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, and please, and tell me more about how that tied into your story, and about the origins of your business as well, and because I think that that kind of relates to Mary's story too, doesn't it? Like it all kind of links together. So for those that are watching
Absolutely.
this that know nothing about what you do, tell us the origin story. of how you
Okay,
got
the
to be.
origin story. Oh my gosh. Naya, our daughter Naya, who is 41 years old, it started well before she had gotten here. I was carrying her in utero. And I had reached out to a young man, Maurice Jenkins, an architect, and I shared with him that um, I wanted to capture a story about a little girl, and I wanted to, in essence, bring to life her experiences, in terms of day-to-day kinds of things. And he attempted, but it didn't form at that particular time. So when we had Naya, my husband and I went looking for dolls and books that
Mm,
would reinforce our culture and that, that reflected, what we would be teaching her. And we came up very short in
mm,
terms of having that type of story. And so as Naya began to explore, I looked at her one day and I said, you know what? Somebody should write a book about this little girl.
yeah.
And someone ended up being me. Now, my background is mass media arts. I was fortunate to be able to write and report at the White House and Supreme Court and Congress. And, I had a number of things that I was able to do back in my former life as a journalist. I also wrote at this newspaper company called the Afro newspaper in Washington, D.C. I was also a producer for BET, Black Entertainment Television. And we did a wonderful, wonderful show called Story Porch. And it was a show using real life authors and illustrators and making those books come to life using people such as Felicia Rashad to tell the story. We had James Almost, he told the story, Blair Underwood, you name it. We would ask guest celebrities to come and to read and to share. So I've done that. I had some time as a radio host for WHOV FM in Hampton, and so my background was mass media. And when Naya came on the scene, she changed the trajectory of our lives. And it was all about making sure that she saw images that reflected her brilliance and her beauty and reflected our culture. So started out writing a book, Here Comes Naya, the day in the
So
life of a little
cute.
toddler. Yeah, who's
Oh,
discovering her world. Her dad's there reading the paper. She's trying to read the paper. Her mom is, doing it. And so she's just going through the day in the life. Well, wrote the book, didn't have a publisher,
mm,
sent out the query letter, got wonderful, 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 wonderful rejection notices from publishing houses saying, we don't think that this book is suitable for our list. And
mm,
so that started me with my own publishing company, High Hopes Publishing. And I was able to take my mother's pension money. She received $2,000
yeah.
from Horseman Doll Factory. She gave me the $2,000 to be able to create our first book, Here Comes
Wow.
Naya, with an audio tape. And the rest is history.
Wow. Darla, what year was that?
That was 1984.
1984. Oh my gosh. You started a publishing company in 1984 from your mother's pension of
Absolutely.
$2,000. That is amazing. What were you thinking at that time? Because this is entrepreneurship, isn't it?
It is.
The
It is. It is. And what
it,
I was thinking is my mother was going to use that money to buy a washer and dryer. And
yeah.
she believed in me, she and my dad. They no dream was outlandish. And when
Mm,
I had attempted to get this gentleman in New York to publish, and he took my manuscript and promised deadlines and didn't come through. And when I finally got it, and I knew that separations would, cost money, I shared it with my mom, and it was a no-brainer. She immediately
mm,
sent me the money. We wrote the book. We did
wow.
the audio tape. We were invited into the schools. We created the wonderful world of imagination using the
Mm,
book, using slides, using music, to be able to get children excited about reading, writing, and telling their own stories and
yeah.
publishing their own books. And so
Mm.
that just took on a life of its own. We always wanted to do the doll. We wanted to do the Naya doll, but again, I didn't have any money. And
Yeah.
so it took us a while. It took us until 1990, 1991. We launched the first African American doll to speak and sing in Spanish, Swahili, and English, the Here Comes Naya talking doll. And
Goodness.
my dad funded that project.
Okay. So did you build the business? So from 1984 is the starting year of your business, it sounds like. And then what kept you motivated and excited and going throughout that time? And financially, did the business grow? Like, were you able to like generate revenue to be able to keep investing in the business and keep growing the business? Like, what was that like? Especially for those of us, I was born in 1977, so I'm 47 years strong. But I was still growing up in the 80s. So what was it like being an entrepreneur at that time?
It was exciting. It was very exciting because I was a part of, I call it a collective. Back in
Mm,
Washington, D.C., there were a number of us who created dolls. In fact, I had read about this wonderful woman in Fort Washington, Maryland, who had created a talking doll. And I contacted her sight unseen, and I shared with her I wanted to do the same thing. And she shared her manufacturer in New York, Lucette
mm,
Miller, the Shining Star doll. And so we had quite a community. We had quite a community of doll inventors. I remember Golden Ribbon, and I remember Olmec, the Olmec company. There were a number of us who gathered to in essence do what we didn't see that was being done on a mass scale, and that
mm.
is to have dolls and images that represented all children, because all children deserve to see themselves reflected in the books they read, the
Yeah,
toys they play with, and the media that they watch. So it was exciting. I felt
yeah.
very supported by a community. I was also part of a writers guild in Washington, D.C., that
Mm,
my friend Marita Golden, she founded. And so there was lots of support. It felt as if it was a renaissance. It was a
yeah.
renaissance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell me, for those that can see me, I'm a white woman, and I have a British accent. So I grew up in the UK, but left in 1998, and I've lived and worked in the US for over 24 years now. But when I was growing up, I was in a very rural area with a severe lack of diversity. Oh, no, I was about to say diverse representation, but I mean, it was just, there was a lack of diversity. Practically everybody was white where I grew up. And so it wasn't, while I've always been an advocate for human equity, and I've been aware of people who have a different color skin to my own, these things, when you're growing up, as in my experience, it wouldn't have crossed my mind when I was 9 years old that all the Barbies or all the dolls were just white. And then, of course, as you become aware, I personally have become aware of this, I'm like, oh my gosh, how horrific that it's been so long where a baby doll has been given to a child and it doesn't reflect the child at all. What do you think is the importance of kids having books and toys and stories that reflect their experience? Like, why is that important? How does that help that child?
When we take pictures, even now, the
Yeah,
first person we look for in the picture is ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
And when we don't see what we are looking for, it gives us pause. And for many of us who have been left out of the picture,
yeah,
it renders us invisible
yeah.
to a child. What does that do to a child's psyche when he or she doesn't see himself or herself reflected?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point of it, is to be seen, is to be heard, is to be valued, is to be celebrated. And that's my work in terms of what I've been doing for almost 4 decades,
Mm-hmm.
creating programs and products where a child can go down that toy aisle and look on that toy shelf and see oh, wait a minute, that doll looks like me. Oh, there's someone that looks like me. And so, from a self-esteem perspective, from a uh, identity perspective, it does everything for all of us to be able to be seen.
Yeah.
Mm.
What was,
And the thing about it is, I thought about my mom. My mom worked at Horseman Doll Factory, and while they had, I called white dolls dipped in chocolate, they didn't have the authentic noses, but she
yeah.
made sure that we had brown Chatty Cathy dolls. We had brown dolls, because the whole point of it is to be able to see the beauty in self and the beauty in all people, no matter what shape, size, color,
Mm-hmm.
but it's to be
Mm-hmm.
able to see the beauty in self and of self.
Mm-hmm. How did it feel to hold your first Naya doll?
Oh my gosh. It felt the same way that it probably, well, I was going to say it felt the same way that it felt when I created the first Here Comes Naya book,
Mm,
you know, birthing a baby, mhm, birthing a product,
mm-hmm.
birthing an idea. We as entrepreneurs, you know, we just it's you can't put it into words. You
Mm-hmm.
can't put it into words to take something from here and to be able to have it manifested where people can hold it and people can enjoy it and people can, have their own experiences with it.
Mm-hmm.
No words.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've been an entrepreneur and a business owner for 40 years. Is that
Over
correct?
40 years. Over
Over
40
40
years.
years.
Hmm?
So, what have you seen over that time in terms of ebbs and flows and positives and negatives and changes? And what has kept you going for that long?
I have so many stories. I don't know if you want me to tell the story in terms of me going to New York for the toy fair. I didn't have the money for any of the tables or even could afford to get in, and how I stood at the tower and holding the Naya doll, my husband and I, just for someone to come so that I could share my story, and it was snowy that day, and people kept thinking I had a child inside of a bag, and that would spark conversation. I don't know if you want me to tell the story about driving to Tyco with my attorney, and we were there pitching the Naya doll, and we were told, oh, had you gotten here 6 months sooner, we would have definitely been able to green light it. But now we have three dolls that the flavor of the month, and so therefore, we don't need the Naya doll. I don't know if you want me to tell the story of how we had an assembly line in my basement. Can you picture a sea of Naya dolls where we had members of our community to come and put shoes and socks, and my mom was there at the table putting shoes and socks and a bulky sound device in the doll, and we were getting those dolls out, in terms of mail orders, and the doll was featured in Essence and Ebony and all of that. I don't know if you want me to tell the story of Kmart when we went to Kmart and we pitched to Kmart, and they says, you know what? It's a good idea. Can you have this doll ready for us in terms of the fourth quarter? And it was January. And I said, oh, of course we could, not knowing, again, how are we going to do it? I said, but could you share with us your vendors? And they shared with us a vendor. We got in touch with them. He says, yes, I can, we can partner. We were able to create the Naya doll for Kmart. However, we shared with them that we think that we probably need to purchase more than just a limited run. And they says, well, it's a new doll. They purchased a limited run. People were calling all over the United States for the Naya doll. And so they called us during December, says, can you air freight some more dolls? It's like, no, we shared with you
You
that we
just,
had this
yeah.
marketing, this unorthodox marketing machine. And so they sold out. And the next year, Kmart bellied up, and went out of
Ah,
business. And so that was our experience with Kmart. And then I don't know if you want me to tell the story of when Naya was doing a project on South Africa. She was 11 years old. And being a journalist, I knew that the late President Nelson Mandela was coming to the States. So I told Naya, I said, well, Naya, why don't we write a letter to the President of the United States and share with the then President, Bill Clinton, that you would love to meet President Nelson Mandela, that you were doing a story on South Africa. And so we wrote a letter, came home one day, got a message. Hi, Naya, this is Ann from the White House. Just want you to know that your family, that the president and his wife, Hillary Clinton, would love for you and your family to be our guests at the inaugural celebration of the late President Nelson Mandela. And so
Oh,
we were invited to the White House. I mean, you're talking about just an amazing week. The media followed Naya throughout the week. And at the White House, we were there. He made his wonderful speech. We were surrounded by all the dignitaries, and it was just an amazing day. And as we left, one of the media persons, he says, well, Naya, did you get a chance to speak with President Nelson Mandela? And she says, no, but just standing there and being a part of it was just amazing. Fiona, no sooner than we had gotten home, we got another call from the president of the National Press Club
yeah,
saying, we heard that Naya didn't get a chance to meet specifically with President Nelson Mandela. We'd like for
yeah.
you and Naya to be our private guests, to
Wow,
sit at a luncheon, to be a part of a
wow,
luncheon with President Nelson Mandela and his daughter. So we were able to be there, and Naya gave President Nelson Mandela a letter, and we presented a doll. And the letter said, to the children of South Africa, keep believing. And so it's stories like those. And I made a
yeah.
promise to him that I would do whatever I needed to do to make sure that any child who wanted the Naya doll in South Africa would be
Mm,
able to get the Naya doll. So to answer your question in terms of what keeps me going, what is
mm,
my why
mm,
goes back to wanting to make sure that all children
mm,
see themselves reflected in the
mm,
books they read, in the toys they play with, and the television shows that they watch. And that's
mm,
what keeps me going in the midst of not having the financing, in the
mm.
midst of not having the team at times, in the midst of not having what some would say adequate capital to be
Yeah,
able to mass produce on a global scale,
yeah.
to be able to see the process and to be able to celebrate the journey because of
Mm,
the wonderful people who I've met and who have come and who are part of our story, like Tom
mm,
Girardi, who was my attorney for years. He was the attorney for Barney. He represented me pro bono throughout
mm,
the entire time, like
mm.
Suzanne Mills Winkler, who worked for Mattel for years, who
Yeah.
became a partner and was able to take our prototypes that we did on the American Inventor Show and all that we did on the toy box, and to take those prototypes and to make a whole family of dolls. You know,
Mm,
I mean, there's so many people. I can go down the list, who
mm.
believed and who continue to believe in us, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah, so that's
yeah.
what keeps me going.
Mm,
That's my why. Now I have grandchildren. So now I'm going into that whole the virtual video game,
yeah,
and the animated cartoon. I'm going into that arena because of them. They play so many video games,
mm,
but the programmers don't look like us.
yeah,
Billions and billions of dollars that they make, and I want to make sure that that the characters. I want to make sure that the children can see their lived experiences through
yeah.
the video games. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've realized your vision and dream for where you wanted Nia Dolls to go? And I want to come back to the video game discussion as well. But you mentioned somebody at Mattel. Like, is there would like where can people get a Nia doll? And two, like, would you have liked to have sold it to a Mattel or a manufacturer and have the Nia doll, as mainstream as a Barbie doll, for example? Like,
Yes, we've pitched to Mattel. We've pitched to
mm,
Mattel several times, and we were told again that they had already pretty much had a character or a doll, similar or a
Mm,
doll line. They often speak about the American girl, but we have a whole different kind of brand
right.
that we also pitch to them. That well, it's inclusive. It's inclusive on a global scale. And so
Yeah.
the answer is yes. We've pitched to Mattel, we pitched to Tyco, we pitched to Hasbro, we pitch, and people say, well, maybe because you were before your time, maybe you need to go and re-engage and pitch again. Well, the thing about it is we're open. We're open. We have this wonderful brand, that is right, that continues to speak to the children now, that has this even technology piece,
Yeah.
that comes with it. So yeah, we would be
Yeah.
open, very open.
So say money was unlimited, like,
Mhm.
or money is unlimited, and you have access to all the capital you want, you have access to all the resources you want. What would you want to see for the Naya doll? What's your big audacious goal or dream,
Oh
Darla?
my gosh. Okay, well, here we go. If you can dream it,
Yes.
just like the whole reimagineering in terms of, I mentioned Disneyland, I would want to see, the Naya stage, the whole Naya stage show with Naya and the Clubhouse crew, rocking it out. And I would
Yeah.
love to see the whole Naya and the Clubhouse crew feature film. I would love, to have Naya play dates, at different venues, for little girls and little boys to come, to be able to, just to let their imaginations run wild, with
Yeah.
of course characters and with the dolls. But and I also would love to have an opportunity to be able to have those young people to be able to make their own dolls, to be able to
Yeah.
pass on this whole wonderful, wonderful skill in terms of doll making and inventing, to the next generation. And then you have
Yeah.
Build a Bear. Well, you have, build a
Building.
Naya Kids doll,
Yeah.
that thing. I mean, it's limitless. It really is
Yeah.
limitless, because the whole point of it is to be able to understand that this is a whole universe,
Correct.
this whole
Yeah.
world. And it's a world that I think more than anything else is what many of us have been working for our entire lives. And
Yeah.
that's a world where all humanity is respected.
Yeah.
All humanity, is valued. All humanity, is given an opportunity, to be able to soar.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it sounds like you'd be quite willing to do a deal with Disney to
Oh,
allow
oh, absolutely.
all these things to
Absolutely.
happen.
All these
Yeah,
things.
it's like mission aligned.
Yes,
And in that vein, I love that you, a woman who's been an entrepreneur for over 4 decades, that you're looking towards, okay, so what's the next thing? What now? How can I stay current, and not just stay current? How can I think about the future?
that's
And,
right.
the video game and the industry and film and television, of course, like, film and TV is my biggest passion too. And so what are you working on right now to be able to help have equitable representation in video games?
I'm working on a dissertation that's almost done. I will be
Are
defending, and
you?
yes, I will be
Good.
defending, and probably in less than 2 more months. And
Yeah.
here's the deal. It's Naya. It's Naya and the Clubhouse crew,
Yeah.
an Ujima-centered approach to social emotional learning for
Yeah.
Black girls. And so
Yeah.
what I'm working on, and what I have been working on, is to get data behind what has been working for years. Now I have the data to show that what we've created, you know, is significant. What we've created is necessary. What we've created is a gift that keeps on giving.
That's incredible because this is for your PhD, am I correct?
EDD, a doctorate in education policy and leadership.
And that's what you're working on right now. So
That's
you're
what I'm
going to be
working on right now.
Dr. Darla Davenport-Powell.
And so the virtual video game is a part of that. The virtual
Okay.
video game, because it speaks about scaling up. How do we scale up? How do we scale up so that I don't have to make my quote unquote personal appearance, everywhere, but we have a video game that does the same thing. And let me tell you a story. When I was little, I used to watch this wonderful show called Romper Room and Romper Room,
Again,
Romper Room, Romper Room,
Romper
Romper
Room.
Room.
Okay.
And at the end, Miss Nancy would pull out her magic mirror and she would call out the names of the children in the viewing audience. And I would stand there on Saturday waiting for Miss Nancy to call my name. And she would call Becky and Ralph and Jennifer and Veronica. And she never called my name.
Yeah.
And I felt sad. I felt invisible.
Mm.
And little did I know that was an imprint where I thought that the beginning of our story was our having Naya and going out, but the beginning was way before that when
Mm.
I stood and I didn't see myself.
Mm.
I didn't hear my name. Little did I know that she didn't know any of us, and that
Mm.
these were just random names. But again, to speak to a child who's standing there, with
Mm.
excitement. Oh, she's going to call my name. She's going to see me. Oh, and she didn't. And I remember what that felt like. And so, with every obstacle, with every challenge,
Yeah.
it takes me back to the why. I
Yeah.
don't want any child to feel what I felt.
Yeah.
I don't want any child, and I don't want any entrepreneur to feel what I felt. And what I mean by that is that I at this point, I realized the importance of entrepreneurs taking care of ourselves. You know, I think more than anything else, we we work hard, we do the grind, you know, we're trying to make it happen, you know, and sometimes it's oftentimes it's to the detriment of ourselves, you
Yeah.
know. And so I also, just like even back then, wanting to make sure, that our daughter was represented and that children, felt represented. I want to make sure that we as entrepreneurs, you know, are seen, in terms of the things and the challenges that we have, you know,
Yeah.
that we are seen, fully seen. And
Yeah.
that one of the things that I know to be true is that we put too much emphasis on the grind. I remember this poem that I used to say years ago, the Don't Quit poem by Edgar Guest. When things
Mm.
go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the
Mm.
funds are low and debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit.
Mm.
And even as I think about that, I thought about that last line, rest if you must, but don't you quit.
Mm.
Well, I want to challenge that, and propose a paradigm shift. Rest is a must,
No.
not an option, not a last resort, but a requirement so you won't quit, you know.
Yeah.
So upon this whole process, what I've learned and what I'm learning, Fiona, is radical rest.
Mm.
Radical rest. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's 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 of utmost importance
Mm-hmm.
that we practice radical rest. I
Mm-hmm.
was reading before, I came on, I was reading about entrepreneurs and how 72% of entrepreneurs report that they've been affected by mental health issues. 72%.
Yes. It's ridiculously high, isn't it? And I
Right.
and in that vein, like I want to, with our at this point in our conversation, bring it back round to us entrepreneurs and our tuck group. So the reason why we initiated or decided to have this call to share with the world in the first place is
Mhm.
because within our tuck cohort that happened over a year ago, and there's like somewhere between 40 and 50 of us in a group WhatsApp thread, like we've stayed in touch
Yes,
throughout this year. We've been having these monthly calls where, you make it if you can. And
yes,
Darla, you have been like a consistent presence to all of us in that thread and on the calls. And every time we get on a call and get together and you just radiate and share your light seamlessly. And it always, there is a point in that call where we're like, inspiration from Darla, like,
bless you.
like motivating us. And so Maggie in our thread was like, we should have a podcast with Darla. Like, we need to have your voice out there. And I think one of the specific questions or calls for your inspiration, please, is like, how do we take care of ourselves as entrepreneurs? Like, how do we rest? How do we protect our mental and emotional health? Like, what words of wisdom can you give to us, please?
Here's the thing, and Fawn, I don't know, you're familiar with Fawn Weaver.
Mm-mm.
She's the CEO of a wonderful, wonderful company, uh,
Okay.
Uncle Nearest. And she
Yeah.
was talking about how she tried to attempt suicide twice,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't succeed at it. We're grateful for that. But she said the thing about when she talks, she says she's sharing in hopes that it's helpful to other people, but the bottom line to it is she's sharing her own experience. So if it's something in it that someone can take from it, that's the hope. I remember when I was trying to be all things to everybody, Fiona, back in the day,
Yeah.
and my body just rang out that something is terribly wrong. And it
Mm,
it affected me so much where I had panic attacks almost like
mm,
every day it seemed I had a panic attack. And I was
mm,
going back and forth to the emergency room to the doctor for them to say, there's nothing physically wrong with you, you know?
mm.
And that here it is. I looked at what I was involved in. I was on a number of boards. I was running a business. I think even back then I may have even been getting another degree and a mother and, just playing drums and just so many, just name something I was doing it, right? And
Yeah.
then my body just said, no, we're not going another further, as they say. That was a wake up call. And so I had to stop. I stopped everything. I got off the boards. I just took a whole year where I just stopped. I
Yeah.
stopped, and I had to reimagine, my life. And what I did at that point, I developed 3 R's called reflection, recovery, and refinement. Reflection, recovery, and refinement. And what I did, I ended up going to a naturopath physician, and there she was able to share some things in terms of new relaxation techniques.
Mm,
I did Reiki treatments, I did meditation, I did colonics, I did mindfulness techniques. I think I probably even did a little Tai Chi. I took, I call it my spiritual practice. I took morning walks, where I could just commune with nature, commune with the creator, you know, and I intentionally scheduled time to rest, you know, where I did it was just a reawakening as to what rest is, that we don't rest because we're exhausted, but we rest for productivity.
mm,
So what I did back then, I did a whole different kind of plan. Even
mm.
I was working from rest, working from rest, scheduling those intentional pauses, you know,
Yeah.
uh-huh, to gain clarity and perspective, and even in terms of the recovery piece, the recharging piece, I did everything from breath work, I shared being able to breathe, the
Yeah.
tapping, which from a neurological standpoint,
Hmm.
shows that you can break up, those toxins. I began
Yeah.
to prioritize, you know,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
rest. And from the standpoint of refinement, I went from doing a to-do list to a to-be list.
Hmm.
So, because at one point on my to-do list, I mean, I had like 100 things, and I told my husband, "Oh my gosh, this to-do list is too long." He says, "Who made the list?" So when he said that, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, I made the list." So I stopped making to-do lists and I started making the to-be list, to be present, to be
Hmm.
loving, to be
Hmm.
kinder to myself, you
Hmm.
know. And I realized that it was just a whole paradigm shift, you
Hmm.
know. I was interrogating my mental models as to what this entrepreneur journey looked like. And we did a total revamp. So
Yeah.
even now, when I speak to you and speak to others, who I see, who have so much passion and know-how and who's gifted and, have that entrepreneur spirit, it's like, absolutely. But the bottom line to it is none of this stuff matters if we
Hmm.
don't. And we have to matter to ourselves. And I
Yeah.
remember Naya told me maybe a couple of days ago, and this is my mantra for 2025. You don't need to do more. You need to do less better. To do more. You need to do less better.
Hmm. That is
Mhm.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Darla. And I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so, to your point about the meditation and the mindfulness, I think
Mhm.
I've shifted my attitude. I think a couple of decades ago, I'd feel guilty for having a rest. Like, I'd feel guilty if I wasn't up, and immediately doing something. And
Mhm.
today, I try to practice my mornings where I avoid looking at email until I have finished exercising, meditating, journaling, because all of those things help me be most productive. You know,
Yes.
like if
Yes.
I'm waking up and the first thing I'm doing is looking at my email, then I'm not being me. I'm not being present. I'm immediately going down, a tunnel of mental torture. I
Mhm.
think so.
Absolutely.
It's like
Absolutely.
let's prepare ourselves and to be able to how our minds react to the things that entrepreneurship throws at us, I think. And it's easier just to take a step back then and that way realize, like, I think when you said this earlier, like, it actually doesn't really matter. Like, it matters, but then it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah, and then look at it too,
Like,
because one of the things that happens, anybody who knows me, I used to have it where I was talking on the phone, right, and then my phone would die. I mean, my phone kept constantly dying in between conversations, Fiona,
yeah,
and I thought about it. I said, wait a minute, we often wait until our phones are on 1% before we charge them, right? And somehow we expect our bodies and minds to keep running on empty. And so, I fell off the trap trying to be, again, everything to everybody, because the bottom line to it, I wasn't charging. I wasn't giving myself a full charge, you know? I would
yeah,
give
that's a
myself,
brilliant.
yeah, give myself, okay, as needed, but then we don't operate optimally when we do that.
Yeah,
So we have
yeah,
to give our bodies, our minds, all of that a full charge.
yeah. That's a
Mhm.
brilliant analogy. Brilliant analogy, you know. we we need a phone that has a strong battery in order to function. So
Yes,
we
yes,
need
yes,
why do we not treat ourselves that way? Yeah.
yes. And
Well,
so it's not sustainable. Again, if we're moving away, it's not sustainable.
yeah,
And the thing about it is, what good is it if we don't have joy on the journey or in the
correct.
journey,
Correct.
what good is
Yes.
all of this if it's
Yes.
it's like, oh, we're begrudging, oh my gosh, I got 1,000 emails that I have to get to. No, 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 you don't have to get to them right now.
Yeah.
What is right in front,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
do the thing that's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think now to the whole thing of talking to young entrepreneurs is to be able to debunk the myths, to be able to get to the core of why are we in this in the first place?
Yeah.
Are we in this so that we can have more free time, to be able to have ownership of our time.
Hmm.
Are we in it so that we can have more freedom to move about the country, because we
Hmm.
have the means to do that? Well, if we're in it to do that, then we have to make sure that this is taken
Hmm.
care of
Carol.
in the way that it should be taken care of.
Beautiful, beautiful, Donna. Well, I think we should wrap this conversation. I'm very excited to get to witness at some point, whether it be on a video or photographs, of your name being called on stage when you receive your PhD. Will that be
EDD.
this year? Will that be this year? Sorry,
Yep.
EDD. I apologize.
EDD. Yes, that's okay.
EDD. Your
Yes, yes,
EDD.
yes. That will
Um,
be this year.
2025. And yeah, and that's so poignant, going back to, like, call your name, and your name is gonna, you have put in so much passion and energy and hard work and rest to achieve successes in where you are. And so it is just a joy and a delight to be your friend. And I am so grateful that Tuck brought us together, and now we're bonded and connected for life. Is
Forever,
there
forever friends.
any parting words that you want to share, for people watching, for our Tuck cohort, for anyone?
First of all, Fiona, I'm just so grateful, so grateful to you. I'm grateful for your authenticity. I'm grateful for your courage. I'm grateful for uh, your compassion. I'm grateful for your brilliance. And I just wanted to take a moment to be able to celebrate you,
Oh.
celebrate you. And I think those are my parting words, that we need to take time to let people who have come into our lives, who have added joy in the ways
Mm.
that they've added joy. We have to take time to let people know how much we appreciate them, how much we appreciate, how much I appreciate you. And to be able to sit in it, to be able to hold it, because we're ever giving out and pouring out. And those of us who know this journey, we know how taxing and demanding it is. And so every opportunity that we can get to be able to pour back into each other, to be able to say, I see you, I hear you, I celebrate you, I value you, and I thank the Creator for you. Let us do that, because those are the vitamins, those are the seeds that keeps us keeping on.
Amen. Such a good preacher, Darla. Thank you.
Love you, Fiona. Let
I
me hear
love
you
you too, Darla. Let that
roar.
lionheart roar. All right. I love you, my friend. Bye.
I love you, my friend. Continue to have a super fantastic day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.